Morning Consult has officially released its first post-Kamala poll, so I thought it'd be pretty fun to just take a quick look at the numbers and see who's up, see who's down, and who is flatlining. Hint, hint, Pete Buttigieg. Thank God, right? So anyway, we see Joe Biden here at 30%, Bernie Sanders at 22%, which, by the way, I'll show you the trends in just a minute. 22% is pretty much the highest that he's been at for quite a while, at least in this poll. Elizabeth Warren at 16%, which is a 1% bump, and it is her first bump since pretty much mid to late September. So, um, she might have gained a little bit from Kamala's decline. Pete Buttigieg 9%, Mayor Bloomberg a surprising 6%, starting to bite up at the heels, bite up at the heels of Mayor Pete. Andrew Yang 4%, Cory Booker, blah blah blah. So interesting. So I thought this is where the really interesting stuff is at. So Joe Biden, pretty much where he's been at, kind of, you see those bumps, you see those rise, up about 1% from the last poll. Bernie Sanders up 2%, as you can see here, from previously. And this is, as I was saying earlier, pretty much the highest that he's been at all the way, at least in this poll, since 28 of April, at least, at least in this poll, which is basically when Joe Biden announced that real big bump here is Joe Biden's announcement. Because you'll remember early on, Bernie Sanders really was polling very high, but then he did lose a little bit when Joe Biden first announced. And as I was saying, when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, this is the first time that she's seen an increase in the polling, really since here in September, 22nd of September to the 29th was the last time that she had any kind of bounce in the poll. But of course, she's still significantly lower than she was then, but it's the first time she's going up. Pete Buttigieg finally seeming to be a bit steady here. So he's, for the past 3 polls, he's been stuck at 9%. So perhaps finally him being, starting to be perceived as a supposedly top tier candidate, although I think that's absolute rubbish. When you have 0% of black support, there's no way that you could ever win in the Democratic primary, and so the idea that he was ever top tier is ridiculous. But he was polling very well in some of the early states, and so he started seeing a bunch more media criticism, and it does look like that's starting to get to him. He's been pretty flatlined, and Michael Bloomberg, really, I mean, all I see, by the way, now are Michael Bloomberg ads. Whenever I click on a YouTube video, it's just Michael Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg. Who knows? Maybe you got a Bloomberg ad before you watch this video. God, I am definitely not voting for him, but he is running a lot of ads, and it definitely does seem to be giving him a boost. Plus, to be fair, he does have, name recognition from being mayor of New York and the like. When it comes to Pete Buttigieg, one of the interesting things is that we talk about him as an establishment candidate, and he certainly is, but the intuitive sense is, well, why would establishment people want to support him? Because isn't he just taking from Joe Biden? But the thing is, and David Pakman made this point really well, is just that, well, hey, look, we vote in, since it's the primaries, we vote in sort of in order. And so if Joe Biden is going to do really poorly in the first states, it's actually a really good strategy to have Pete Buttigieg take take a win in the first states, even if he's not actually going to win, in order to take away momentum from Bernie Sanders, who, if he won Iowa, New Hampshire, and then possibly even Nevada, then it's a whole new game map. But if Pete Buttigieg can stop him, or at least kind of seriously give him a real a real fight in at least Iowa or New Hampshire, then it's much more difficult for Bernie Sanders to have that kind of momentum narrative that he's going to need going into Super Tuesday. So that's actually, I think, really good analysis. Again, that's from David Pakman, but I think that's a really good point on Pete Buttigieg, and it's how he's relating to sort of the establishment or whatever. But it does look like he's flatlining. It does look like he's flatlining a bit, and now going on to second choice voters. So we see Biden supporters have Bernie Sanders as their second. A lot of people are really surprised by this. I don't know that I find it personally. I don't know that I find it super surprising. I mean, a lot of Joe Biden's support, whether you really want to admit it or not, really is a lot of working class people. So, it's not particularly surprising that Bernie Sanders would be second, and then Elizabeth Warren here coming in after Bernie, and then Pete Buttigieg. For Sanders supporters, Elizabeth Warren is second choice, followed by Joe Biden, and then and then third here, Andrew Yang at 7. I think that really shows you how much Sanders supporters really do not like Pete Buttigieg. And by the way, I'll just skip over to Buttigieg supporters here. It's definitely that lack of love is certainly returned, with Bernie Sanders only having 11% for second choice support among Buttigieg supporters. So it really seems that the narrative here is true. Bernie supporters, of which I would include myself, do not really like Pete Buttigieg, and Pete Buttigieg supporters are not big Sanders fans. In the aggregate, of course, there are exceptions. And then looking here at Warren's second choice is Bernie Sanders, followed by Joe Biden, and then Pete Buttigieg. So not too surprising. Favorability numbers: Bernie Sanders, unsurprisingly, highest rate of favorability. And let's see, is that the lowest? Not quite the lowest on unfavorability. Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang, and for whatever reason, Klobuchar. But they also have very relatively low name recognition. But the unfavorabilities for Sanders are also obviously very good. As you would expect. Joe Biden in second place in terms of favorability. Nothing else too interesting here. So let's go over here to the early states. And if I didn't say it already, one of the great things about Morning Consult is that its national polling has a plus or minus 1% interval. So that's actually really good. And its early state polling is plus or minus 4%. So pretty good there as well. And so Joe Biden at 28, Sanders at 21, Elizabeth Warren at 14, Buttigieg at 9, Steyer at 9. Somehow Steyer's really fighting Pete Buttigieg right here. I guess Bloomberg isn't going to be competing in some of those early states. I think he's starting in Super Tuesday or something, but and it's going to shape up to be a battle of the billionaires later. But for now, it is Steyer versus Buttigieg for the early states. Andrew Yang 4%, Booker 3, Klobuchar 3, and these are all the same. So overall, really interesting. They update the Morning Consult every week, so it's fascinating to get to take a look at how it's changed. And I will be sure to put a link to the Morning Consult in the description so you can take a look at it for yourself. So if you like this video, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Do that.